Welcome to the Moon Collective Sanctuary. I'm Dr. Lydia Luna, and I invite you to join me on a journey of self-discovery, healing, and transformation as we explore the depths of our inner and outer world to unlock our truest potential. Welcome back to the Moon Collective Sanctuary podcast. My name is Dr. Lydia Luna, a licensed clinical psychologist and founder of the Moon Collective Sanctuary. And I want to welcome back Briana Damavandi, a licensed clinical social worker who has been here a few times now, but we have to bring her back because I love her, number one, and because she's so knowledgeable about so many different areas, but specifically about holistic healing. And today we're going to talk about that, what it means to be a therapist in the holistic space. So thank you so much for being back. Welcome.
Thanks for having me. Great to see you as always.
Yes. So for the listeners who may not have tuned into the prior episodes, I'd love for you to share a little bit about yourself and what brought you to this work.
I'm a certified EMDR therapist and consultant and very much specializing in trauma and the body, bringing that into treatment. So anything in the somatic psychotherapy lens. I have a background in trauma-informed yoga. I'm a 200-hour yoga certified teacher. So I'm very much from that lens of how do you bring the body into treatment? And I started that training and kind of that whole learning and that, I guess you could say, pivot from being a traditional therapist in grad school because I was studying for my thesis of sexual assault trauma and how do you really work through it. And yoga was such a really cool tool and modality. So I was studying how do you use yoga as a tool to help with healing from sexual assault, reclaiming your body, engaging in empowerment, things like that. And so that really opened up this whole world of there's more than yoga and identifying the breath and really from a trauma-informed lens because there's a whole world of holistic stuff and a million ways to breathe. And the ways they are taught, though, aren't always empowering and aren't always ways that really help a survivor really heal in a way that is supportive to their nervous system, to their lived experience.
And I think that's part of the trend that's shifting, right? In terms of mental health, from focusing on symptoms to really making it about the body, mind, spirit connection. So maybe we can start there. What does it mean even to have holistic healing or be in holistic care?
Yeah, completely. I mean, because really you do need all three to have, when you think of purpose and a good life or a healthy, happy life, you really have to be connected on those avenues. I mean, that's why too, in the addiction world, for example, with AA, why is God and religion or faith, and it doesn't even have to be God if you don't believe in it, but you need something bigger than yourself to connect with and to believe in. And because we know that when it comes to healing, we all need something. And if you think you're God or if you think you're the end all be all and everything's random, I mean, it's a really hard place to then from there go through pain and go through hardship and find meaning and resiliency through that.
And I think what's cool about now as we're getting more scientifically sophisticated is that there is more evidence how there is more than just the body and mass. There is something that happens even when people transition. Studies have shown that even we weigh a little bit less after death. And it's supposedly said that it's the soul leaving the body. So even when we think about the quantum field, that's energy. So we understand now more and more. I feel like science is catching up to spirituality, right? Where it's like, we know now there is more. And why wouldn't we tap into that or tune into that, even as we heal or in the psychological work?
Yeah. And, especially with the traditional talk therapies that, historically it was very much you go to a therapist, you talk about maybe your past or presenting symptoms, and they do a lot of psychoanalysis, which is helpful, but it doesn't access, that's very much through the logical part of your brain for doing this work. And trauma is not stored there. It's stored in the emotional part of the brain. We access that through the body, through the nervous system, through brain and body-based therapies. And so that's why, clients will go to talk therapy for years and think, oh, why is nothing actually changing? It's because, you're just talking about it and you're venting or whatever it might be, and no actual systemic change is coming apart.
Yeah, so there's this element of embodying the work, even not just keeping it up here, but like feeling it and having it work in here too.
Yeah, and that integration. A lot of times clients will say too, like they think they're an intellectualizer or they, they're very much, they can think something, or maybe they know the tools, but why is change not happening? Why do they not feel better? And it's because there's that disconnect between the mind and the body.
Yeah. And so you shared a little bit about how you kind of connected to this holistic aspect of healing, but maybe share a little bit more about your own journey and what modalities it did help you, and go into a little bit more depth about that, because I feel like it's important even for people to hear from a therapist perspective, not only the work that they do, but how they even arrived to understanding the powerful ways that this works.
Yeah. I feel like you as well. I think that's what we really connected over is we both had to go through our own traumas and all of these challenges, and finding that the traditional modalities of healing were not enough. And so that really is how I kind of ended up here. I mean, I was one of those people where, at 17, I got myself into therapy because I realized there were some things, maybe that weren't the healthiest in my home environment, or things I had to work through, anxiety and stuff like that. And then it just kind of started this journey as, more life happened and more adversity or challenges happened, of finding that, there's something more beyond this. And at the end of the day, understanding trauma, how that showed up for me in my life, and how that, again, I can't just talk it away, or I can't just downward dog away my trauma. Like, it wasn't just the yoga, it wasn't just the talking through in therapy, and
but
I needed more.
How was it in that moment, like, to know this isn't enough? Then what happened for you? How did you decide to seek something else?
Because I tried everything. I feel like I got to this point of I really wanted more, needed more, and I'd go to therapy, and I'm just venting every week, or I'm talking about stuff. I know the family systems at play. I know maybe what wasn't helpful, and yet why do I still feel like crap, or not feel well?
Was it an easy path to find this otherness, or did it take a lot of work?
It's interesting. I wonder your perspective too, because I feel like, so 10 years ago was when I was in grad school, starting this journey of not only with clients, but I was interested in it because, of my own background, going through trauma and just different, life experiences, and really wanting to understand stuff. But I feel like there was not much out there. There was Peter Levine, somatic experiencing. There was Dr. Bessel van der Kolk with Body Keeps the Score. There was a few other people out there, but there really wasn't much stuff. And especially when it came to the spirituality world, I really tried a lot in the Eastern spirituality perspective, because that was kind of all there was. There wasn't much, like even in grad school, I remember there was one class on spirituality, and it was more along the lines of with hospice care and, end of life care, and how do you help people kind of cope with hard things and find meaning. And that was it. And I was like, there's got to be more than this. And then, through the yoga world, I started getting into breath work. And then from breath work, I started learning about things like energy and all these different perspectives and Kabbalah. And it was like, oh, okay, there's a whole world out here. And I don't know if it's just because it's gotten more popular, but for example, now you can go online and there's a million websites and a ton of books and resources. I don't think there was that even just 10 years ago.
Yeah, I agree. For me, I feel like because I grew up more on the religious side, like there was always a pull or a calling to that aspect of things. And even when I was looking at grad schools, I went to Pacifica Graduate Institute but one of the things was because their motto is tending to the soul. So there's always been this thing. It was more psychodynamically oriented. So we looked at dreams, symbolism, all of that, right? So all of that was like delicious for me. But when I did go through like a tremendous loss, that's when I was like, religion, what? Like, I don't even believe in God anymore. All these things happened where I was left with now what? And like you said, even therapy and talking and going every week to speak to somebody, it was helpful, but I had the same feeling like it's not enough. So I think for me, it started with a question of like, what else is there? There has to be more. And now it's like, I need to find that, because like, I just wasn't satisfied. And that's like, I feel like because I asked that, then the universe responded, and it did. It led me to, people in conversations, maybe that's another part of it. I started talking about, I need more, I want more. And people would say, have you tried this? You need to meet with so-and-so. I started doing Reiki, and that Reiki master then introduced me to breath work. And then that led to sound healing. And it just started like going on from there. So from what I'm hearing from you and even my own experience, it's almost like having an intention. And I would say connecting to that need of wanting more. And then we're met there. Okay, so we talked about the nervous system and how there's a rise now in nervous system language in mainstream culture and how that's helping people understand themselves. So maybe we can talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. What's really amazing to see is that people are so much more aware now of how, everything impacts a person. Like we're system to system when we interact with each other. And so starting from, young age to old, it's this perspective that we go into a room and my tone and my body language and all these things, how I show up is going to affect yours. And that doesn't mean it has to be in a negative way and I have to be so careful. It's more that what a beautiful thing to be aware of and to work through and to notice. And so I think it really starts to shift where, for example, in school systems, we find how if you, instead of giving a kid detention for acting out, you help them, teach them how to breathe, teach them meditation, things like that is so much more effective. And so it's understanding how does, for example, as a child who's maybe growing up in a home that's not the healthiest home or there's trauma or whatever it might be, chronic stress even, and just like life is hard. And so for kids, their system develops and however they show up in school, maybe it's behavioral issues or it's anxiety. And, historically teachers always didn't have space for that. And, teachers do have to do a lot. But if we can understand that, how can we better support that child through the lens of helping them learn how to regulate their system and how we can understand how they show up in that classroom, that just sets them up for the rest of their life to be really successful because we're giving them those tools to understand their own system. And we're just being, I think, a little more empathetic and really open-minded in how do we all show up and how does that affect one another and how can we use that really for healing?
Yes. And as you're sharing that, I'm even thinking too, the shift towards community-based healing, like circles, even like retreats that we're doing. I feel like this even got stronger after the pandemic because we were so isolated. We really felt the importance of community and being connected and coming together. So that's also been a shift, I feel like, recently.
Completely. And I love that we're seeing, for example, the pandemic, everyone had to do school and work from their iPad or from their laptops. And at first everyone was like, this is great. We knew pretty quickly for kids, this was not helpful at all. But for adults, I think adults started seeing, you know what, as comforting as it was to do work from home, I need to be around people. And even as a therapy industry, I do mostly telehealth now, which is an interesting shift I'm still kind of struggling with. I really love it on one hand, and it does make therapy more accessible. But I think there's something really beautiful when it's in person, nervous system to nervous system, and that, that magic that really happens. And so I don't know what I'll do with that. I'll probably go back to the office at some point. Right now it's working to do telehealth, but there's something different though when you're in person.
I heard you say attunement and person-to-person connection and bonding and all that. So should we talk about AI and
oh yeah, there's
what that's
so much
doing?
to be said about AI.
Yeah.
ChatGPT, super helpful tool, but it's just a tool. It's not your therapist.
Yes.
So many clients.
I feel like it's a bit dangerous right now. We're not talking enough about the danger. We're all kind of like intrigued and we're in this like honeymoon phase with it, right? It's something new and it's easily accessible and it really almost like says what we want it to say, but it can be quite dangerous in terms of replacing an actual therapist, mental health services, even connection, I feel like, because this can be isolating to rely on AI.
Completely. And it's so similar in a way to social media, where social media keeps you, the algorithm does better for your posts or things like that when it keeps all of the people engaged and on their phone. And so then that's keeping you away from actual human connection. So you might have 10,000 friends. They're not your real friend. You're not actually having a human-to-human experience with them. And so the things with these technology and the way they show up for us in our life with our phones always in our pocket, it's this real big isolation challenge that I think we're really experiencing and seeing.
Something else too that I think about when I kind of distinguish between the two, like in the therapeutic work, there is transference and countertransference. And this is a really important component in the work, right? Because like there's times where I'm picking up on something and then I reflect it back And the patient or the client may not like that very much. And then we can work on what is coming up for them, all of that stuff, and work through that where, and this is my own personal experience. Sometimes it feels as if AI can really cater to what it thinks I want to hear, how I want to hear it. It even asks me certain things. So it's about playing nice in a way, not really challenging. And I know you can prompt it to challenge you, but it's different than this human connection, because essentially that is what we're doing here in the real world, is having a human experience with other humans. And a big part of that is connection. So how do we sacrifice that, right? When it comes to mental health?
I liked what you said about the bringing up really hard stuff in therapy is so important. And the reality is ChatGPT, when people actually do use it as their therapist, and I've had clients tell me, yeah, I use chat all the time when I can't talk to you. And it's that is really challenging because A, it's not helpful. B, it's going to tell you exactly what you want to hear. So it's validating things that maybe aren't the healthiest. And then being able to talk about really hard things, that rupture and rapport that happens in therapy is so helpful. And yet you're missing out on that important part.
Yeah. So what would be your message to those people that are going more and more to ChatGPT or any other AI platform to receive advice or mental health support?
What's hard about the type of people though who use chat as their therapist? Those are the ones I always find they have trouble sticking to therapy. They have trouble wanting to do the work. They want a quick fix. And I understand where they're coming from because they're in pain and they just want healing now. And I really wish it worked like that. I really wish you could heal your trauma in a few sessions.
That would be lovely.
Right. And it doesn't work like that. And actually with trauma work, things often get harder before they get better. It's that snow globe effect. To get the clear snow globe, you got to shake it up. And that takes time.
It takes time. And that's okay that it takes time. It took time to get here. We're organic beings, so it's going to take time to get through this. And even that's a virtue, to practice patience, to trust, to have self-compassion, to take part in a process. We are getting into this mindset of immediacy, instantaneous results, and that's not real and or sustainable, right? The quicker the flare, the sooner the thing runs out of whatever, I don't know what saying that is, but you know what I'm trying to say.
I know what you mean. Yes.
Yeah. AI is helpful for a lot of things, but I would really caution people to use it for mental health.
Absolutely. And in a way, it's just kind of putting a Band-Aid on whatever the underlying symptom is, and it's not fixing it. And then the wound never really heals because maybe you'll feel a little better in the moment, but at the end of the day, you're going to keep going back to chat for the next thing because you're never really, getting out the wound. And I always tell clients who maybe they come in for a few sessions and then they want to take a pause because they feel like maybe it's not helpful. They want a quicker solution. Maybe they're not ready. And it's come when you're ready. But at the end of the day, you're going to go try all these other things. And a lot of times people go to therapy and then they try things like a life coach program or maybe something that's not as evidence-based, which is fine, but you are wasting your time and your money. And because you're trying to look for something that will go faster than it's really meant to go.
So I would say we can use AI to help us. If let's say we need coping skills, we can really personalize it. This is my lifestyle. This is my situation. Give me a list of 10 coping skills to deal with my partner who blah, 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 blah. Or, I need to incorporate more fun in my life or more play. Provide X amount of playful activities to incorporate in my life and then give it details about one's life, right? So personalize it and ask it for things that are almost more specific and not as deep in terms of psychological material, right? Or interpretation of things. And even if you do ask it that, to take it with a grain of salt.
Completely. Or even things if you want to set a boundary with someone and you don't know how to text that.
Yes.
How to say no.
More practical things. Yeah. What I like to do is give listeners and or people a glimpse of what it is like to be a therapist. How do you regulate, you're doing the work psychologically, spiritually. What does that look like on your end? What do you experience in a session, how do you regulate after a really heavy session? And how do you then also ground yourself between sessions? I think that would be interesting for people to know.
Yeah. It's a very, I think, interesting life because our day is always different, depending on if there's a crisis or not, depending on what kind of setting you're in. So I'm in private practice. So I'm at this point where it's actually pretty calm because I'm really not having crisis calls. I'm not having too much of that anymore because of the place I'm at. If you need that kind of support, not a good fit for my practice. So that is nice. I feel like I do have the buffer. But at the same time, what's so interesting is I just feel like in a beautiful way, it's the most important work. And it's not that it's heavy, but it's just I have to show up and give my all with each client. And if I don't, I'm not going to be as effective. And so to do that and to show up that way, I have to be so grounded in my own nervous system. And really it's, the night before I need to be having good sleep. I need to make sure I'm eating throughout the day. I'm not skipping meals because it's easy as a therapist to pack your schedule and not take any breaks in between. And really the 10 minutes in between a 50-minute session is not enough to be able to, what do? You either eat a snack, run to the bathroom, answer an email. Yes. Like, what do you do?
And God forbid a session go over, and then it's really limited.
Yes, which is the reality of, that's the thing. If I'm attuning to you and we're in something really important, like I will go past the 50 minutes if I'm able to, like as much as I can, whether it's 5-10 minutes. I really want to honor a client where they're at and really support them. And that's because I give my all when I'm with a person, like I'm showing up for you. And so I think that energy that you give, it's one of the most beautiful things, and it's really soul work. Like I don't think if it doesn't feel aligned, don't be a therapist if you're just here for the paycheck, because you're not in the right industry. You are showing up with a person on their darkest, hardest moments, and you're just walking alongside them on that. And so it's amazing. I mean, I get to be there and to witness to just complete transformation, or to, the hardest of hardest stories where you're just, I will cry in session with some clients. Like I'm not sobbing because that's not professional, but I really believe in the intersubjectivity of therapy where I'm going to show up as I am as a human and bring that into the room. So if you're having something and you're sobbing and we're going through, your grief or your trauma, and maybe I'm tearing up a little bit in an appropriate way, in a professional way, because I'm showing up real, and I'll share like, this is really hard for you that you're experiencing this. And I see you and I feel what you're feeling right now.
There is a true and deep, intimate connection in this work. We are so attuned. We're noticing so much at once, what they're saying, what they're not saying, the nonverbal communication, the verbal communication, the choice of words. I mean, how it's presented, the priority of the list of the things, like we're picking up on so much. So yes, it makes sense that when something is really profound, that we would also feel it. And yeah, I feel the same. Like there's times where when they're sharing some painful material, like I feel it in my heart and I feel like, the emotions. And I do believe that that's part of the work. And I think that's the beauty of therapy, that you have somebody connecting with you and with your journey and experiencing that, having a witness to that and helping you or supporting you to have a voice to the experience. So on the other side, though, it can be difficult for the therapist to then almost like close out and then like go live their lives, like it's interesting. Do you have, I mean, I'm asking this because I know I do, but do you have any rituals, anything that you do so that at the end of the day or after each session, like you kind of cleanse yourself or create a boundary? Like, what do you do?
Yeah, it helps that, for telehealth sessions, it's in my office. I'm able to shut the door. I think, back during COVID, at that time in my living situation, my office was in my room, the bedroom, which was not helpful. And so really being able to have a physical barrier of you're shutting the laptop, you're shutting the door, you're moving on. And then very much like historically, I remember when I was going through grad school and my first few jobs, I would just run home and take a shower. Like I needed to take a physical shower to just feel like, okay, I'm getting the energy. I'm transitioning into home. But now I think maybe because I have more capacity, like it doesn't affect me as much. I think too, that's the name of the game. And the more years you have in this, you're like, okay, even in between sessions, the grounding I do is help to separate from client to client and not carry it as much. And so whether it's just like that intentionality of, okay, I'm done with my day. A lot of times too, putting my phone on do not disturb, It really helps because my phone has the professional calls through my Google Voice. So it's all there. Like I could respond to emails at any time, client texts at any time. And so putting do not disturb helps me to just say, I'm done. I'm not going to be on my phone anymore. And so people know that, if they can't get a hold of me right away, like in my personal life, call my husband or something because I'm kind of checked out. And that separation, even in my evenings, to not have to be on for even other emails or friends or whatever, if I'm available, great, I'll be checking it. But if I need that separation, it's on do not disturb and I'll check it when I'm ready, which is great to just be like, okay, what do I want to do? I'm going to go cook. I'm going to go to a Pilates class. I'm going to go whatever it is.
That's what I love about our work is that we are called to be intentional about taking care of ourselves because we do have to show up for people. So we have an obligation to show up for ourselves. And in our training, I don't know about everybody's schooling, but in my program, we had to seek individual therapy. We had to do the work. And all along my path, I've had to, like even the things, right, where we're searching for healing modalities for ourselves, then we get to incorporate that in our work. And now we're not just saying, oh, try this. It's like we have felt it, we understand it, we've experienced it. And it forces us to take care of ourselves so that when we're working with people and sharing what may work, like we know.
Yeah, and private practice is helpful because it gives you the freedom to do that. I think the biggest challenge when you're getting licensed and you're doing your hours and you're at clinics, they expect you to work all day, 6 clients in a day, 8 clients in a day. That's normal. It shouldn't be, but it is. And, they expect you. I was at a rehab in Malibu where they literally told us, the 10 minutes in between clients, that's when you should be doing your notes.
Yeah,
and it was like,
that's what it was.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's not sustainable to anyone. And no wonder people burn out. And so the beauty of private practice is you have that freedom to create your own schedule and to find what works for you and your system.
Okay, so this is good for maybe newer therapists who are listening. What is burnout? What does it look like? How does one know if they're approaching that?
Yeah, I think when you start losing the joy in your job or you just feel the fatigue, the tired,
Yes.
or even I think almost too much desensitization, like you're losing the empathy for clients and you're
That's
like,
a big one.
That's not me, but if you can pick up on that, those are always those warning signs.
I almost imagine that goes beyond the therapeutic work. If people in the service industry, if they're becoming desensitized to helping others, being of service, that's a cue. Maybe you've given too much, or maybe you're not giving enough to yourself. And how do we bring balance to that dynamic?
Completely, especially with first responders as well. I mean, it's really heavy, heavy stuff, what you're witnessing, what you're seeing, what you're showing up to.
So I think right now is a good time to talk about what's next in the holistic mental health industry. So we have the mental health support component, but we're also seeing a lot of spiritual coaches, life coaches. Maybe we should talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah, especially too with social media. It's interesting because people will have massive followings just because they maybe went through an experience and they're sharing their journey, what worked for them, which is beautiful. However, it's not necessarily based in clinical expertise, evidence. It's not, and maybe it's their personal experience. And again, it's so individualized healing. And so we can't just follow what one person says, but we're finding that these people and life coaches too, well, nothing against life coaches, you do great work a lot of times, just being very careful of, there's a reason why someone's a licensed therapist. They had to go to a lot of school. They had to really understand, in this world of healing, there's a lot of stuff that's maybe not necessarily true or not necessarily helpful. Like maybe it was helpful for one thing, but I'll give you an example for meditation because I think this is a safe way to give this example. A traditional way to meditate in certain communities, and this is more in kind of the Eastern styles, is you sit cross-legged, you're quiet, like they'll have silent retreats, right? Where you don't speak to anybody. You go on this retreat, you just sit cross-legged for hours and you're supposed to, sit and, whatever you're accessing, that works for very few people. Some people that works and it's great, but especially if you're a person living in a body with trauma, that is going to be so destabilizing and re-traumatizing. And so the problem is if you have a following where you're preaching that and you're not giving a person flexibility to find, well, what works good for you in your body right now, but you're saying this is the only option, the person's going to think, wow, I'm a failure, or I'm never going to get better. This is not helpful. And then they waste their time and their money, and then they might really lose hope on ever being able to find relief.
Yes, it's so true. And I think even if people do work with a life coach or spiritual coach, a wise one would at some point realize, oh, there's deeper work that needs to be done, and they would refer them to a mental health professional. There are limitations in every field, right? Even with mental health, sometimes we see, oh, this person needs a different level of treatment or stabilization. Let me refer them to a treatment center, to a psychiatrist, or maybe there's stuff going on with the diet. Let me refer them to a nutritionist. So there should be a collaborative, holistic lens through any work. We all have our capacity, where we're expertise, and our limitations, and we should be very aware of that. And as a consumer or a patient or a client, we should keep an eye open or the antennas up about who we're receiving care from. But I do believe life coaches have their own lane in terms of like helping you navigate very specific, again, practical, maybe even situations. But if there's more in terms of doing inner work or having to heal from past traumas or certain blockages, a mental health provider may be your best bet. And it is important to practice discernment through your healing journey and not just going through a person that's offering what is seemingly the easy, quick solution of, in 13 weeks, you'll manifest your perfect life. Like, is that real? Like, can we really use, not to like, I love programs and I love these like, very practical ways of doing something, but also like, it may not be the best solution where we can heal all of our trauma in 13 weeks. Like, let's question that,
It's not realistic.
So, yeah.
I don't know anyone who'd be able to do that unless they're doing maybe an intensive EMDR program, for example, or an intensive treatment program.
Yes.
But it's just, if they're promising you the world or all these things are going to come true, definitely just kind of be on guard with it, because the reality is probably not. And maybe you'll feel better at first, but a lot of times it will come back.
I would see it as a way to just get some tools, but don't have this high expectation that you will be healed in a matter of weeks. And if you are, amazing, great. But also, if you don't, you're not a failure. You're not super broken. It's just not the path for you.
Yeah, it's hard. And it's sad, I think, to watch how this is a billion-dollar industry, the self-help industry. And you see all these self-help books, for example, and workbooks constantly coming out, or people in their classes and their courses and their retreats. And no one's reinventing the wheel anymore. Like, really, for the psychology and the holistic world, I mean, maybe new stuff will come out, but a lot of times it's just repackaged other things that already came out. And so I don't know, it's hard to see. I get it. People want to make money, but again, there's this ethics. And that's what I love about when you're licensed is you have an ethical and a legal code you really have to follow. And that's, I think, the difference in how maybe we practice.
Absolutely. What I noticed too is like the more people are good in front of the camera, if they have like a strong presence in social media, that's who grabs on like to the most clients or following or whatever. And to me, it's like, so that's what it takes to be good in front of the camera, and like you get the followings, and then that's more notoriety, more trust. And I've met some of these people that are coaches and have a strong following, and literally that's what they said. It's like, oh, I just show up every day and I speak well in front of the camera, and then people trust and believe what I say. And I'm like, what's the educational background? What's the training? What are the legal and ethical implications behind your work? And it's like, none of that is there. And that's really dangerous. So this is just, a precaution for people.
Yeah.
So AI, and again, there are some wonderful life coaches, spiritual coaches out there, and mental health professionals. There's good and bad of everything. So just discernment, do your due diligence. Don't expect a quick fix. And yeah, like that's part of the journey.
Yeah. And I think too, it's if you're behind the camera and you do have a big following, regardless of what your background is, you're in a position of power, just as we are with clients. People are coming to us with vulnerability. They're in a position where they really need support. And that's where we have to be careful, because unfortunately people do get taken advantage of. And so I think it's just honoring that the role we're in is a really sacred role.
Absolutely. Well, before we wrap up, are there any last words, a message you want to leave the audience with, the listeners?
Yeah, I think too, especially as we talk about, I think the challenges in our field and these things, it's really, I think it comes from this place of we're so passionate about what we do. We love the work we get to do with clients. And I always tell my clients this is like, I'm going to always give it to you 100%. And I'm going to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly. And we're going to decipher through it. There's always a ton of options. But if I say something that maybe rubs you the wrong way, I want you to tell me because that's really important to talk through. And actually, sometimes it's intentional because I want to see where you're at, the response. We need to work through that. And so, I think too, in this podcast, we talked about some things that maybe aren't as popular in this industry, right? It's like, I don't want to ever offend someone who's a life coach, but this is the truth and just things to be aware of. And so I hope people know that, where our hearts are at of why we're even talking about this. I think it's just people deserve knowledge or they deserve, I guess, awareness to critically think when they find what is the best program for me or the best fit as a therapist.
Yes. And giving people permission to ask the questions. How can you help me? What is your training? What is your background? Because that's what we should do as consumers, be informed, right?
Absolutely. And if it's not working, you have every right to get a second opinion and find a better fit.
Yes, yes. Well, thank you so much for being here again. I know we're going to have you back. I feel like part of the Moon Collective Sanctuary podcast is to bring in the collective. And I feel like you're part of the Moon Collective Sanctuary family. So thank you for always showing up and for offering amazing insight and wisdom. I think you're brilliant, and I am so honored to have you here.
Thank you so much. So great to be here and to be a part of what you've created. And I think you were one of the first accounts I found when I started moving into this holistic therapy world, because not a lot of people do both. It's one or the other. And you blend it so beautifully. So it's always an honor to be here with you.
All right. Well, until next time. And we look forward to seeing you guys soon. Take care. Bye.
Thank you for joining me on the Moon Collective Sanctuary. Remember, your journey to a more fulfilling and empowered life continues beyond this episode. Until next time, may you remember who you are and stay open to embrace all that life has to offer. Continue your personal transformation beyond this podcast. Explore our range of healing services and upcoming events at mooncollectivesanctuary.com.